Good evening, all. Let's begin with today's session, dosto. So, look at the first question. With reference to India's solar park scheme, consider the following statements. The first statement says the scheme was launched by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy in 2014 to promote the utility scale solar power projects. Absolutely correct. The second statement says the solar parks are required to be located only on the non agricultural land and must have a minimum capacity of 1000 megawatt. There is a catch. See, it is preferably to be located on the non-agricultural land, but it is not mandatory. Means a solar park may be established on the agricultural land as well, right? Plus, the minimum capacity is 500 megawatt, not the 1000 megawatt. So the second statement is incorrect here. Look at the third statement. The Solar Energy Corporation of India plays a key role in coordinating the development of solar parks with the state governments. This is absolutely correct. So the question is, which of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be only 1 and 3. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. Now look at the explanation part why we picked up this question. There is a reason. So recently it was in news that land bottlenecks drive CPSU's team up with states for 33 solar parks, right? So land acquisition जो है, that is one of the important steps in the timely development of the utility scale solar projects. So land acquisitions की वजह से ये project delay हो रहे हैं और इसको speed up करने की जरूरत है. So I hope you guys understood. Now let's move on to the next question. The second question is based on Sambar Lake. So with reference to Sambar Lake, consider the following statements. The first statement says, flamingos visit Sambar Lake as a part of their annual migration along the Central Asian Flyway. Absolutely correct. The second statement says, Sambar Lake is India's largest inland salt lake. See, अगर हम overall बात करेंगे, so Chilka is the largest brackish water lake, right? Which one? Chilka Lake of Odisha. But Chilka is not an inland lake. It forms an inlet channel with the Bay of Bengal. Understood? So this statement is absolutely correct that Sambar Lake is India's largest inland salt lake. Question is, which of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So correct answer would be C for Calcutta. Both these statements are correct here. Now the question is why we picked up this MCQ. So there's a reason. Recently, Sambar Festival 2025 was observed. And this 5-day Sambar Festival promises an unforgettable experience with its rich cultural performances, thrilling adventures, and exploration of the region's natural beauty. Clear? So Sambar Lake was designated as a Ramsar site in 1990, recognizing its ecological significance as a wetland of international importance, especially for the migratory birds. It is the most important wintering site for the flamingos in India outside the Run of Kutch, hosting both greater flamingos and lesser flamingos. Plus, the saline wetland is elliptical in shape. Do remember this one? It is elliptical in shape with a length of 35.5 kilometer and breadth varying between 3 kilometers to 11 kilometers, right? And it covers an area in the excess of 200 square kilometers surrounded on all sides by the Aravalli Hills. Chaliye, now let's move on to the next question. So look at this one. Question number 3. With reference to the ozone layer, consider the following statements. The first statement says the ozone layer is positioned in the mesosphere. Incorrect. It is positioned in the stratosphere. The second statement is it is crucial for shielding humans from the harmful ultraviolet radiation. Absolutely correct. The third statement says the Kyoto Protocol is an international agreement aimed at phasing out ozone depleting substances. No, that's not. For this purpose, we have we have one important convention, that is Vienna Convention of 1985, and then its protocol, the Montreal Protocol of 1987, right? So the third statement is incorrect here. Question is, how many of these statements given above are correct? So correct answer would be only one. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. Now let's move on to the explanation part. Look at this one, why we picked up this question. One article was published recently in the newspaper. So it says that global ozone layer shows steady healing after decades of action, right? So the World Meteorological Organization projects ozone recovery by 2066 over Antarctica, 2045 over the Arctic, and 2040 for the rest of the world. So this article was in news recently. Important यहाँ पे news है ये. So do remember this, right? And look at this one. So we discussed about the Vienna Convention. and the Montreal Protocol, so Vienna Convention. And India ratified the convention in 1991 and the Montreal Protocol in 1992. Plus, there's one more convention, that is Kigali. So Kigali Amendment of 2016. It addresses the hydrofluorocarbons, the greenhouse gases extending the climate focus, right? So do remember all these facts and figures. अच्छा याद रखिएगा कि जो ओजोन लेयर है, तो ग्राउंड लेवल ओजोन जो है दैट इज हाईली हार्मफुल, वेयर इज द एटमॉस्फेरिक लेवल ओजोन इज हाईली फेवरेबल, राइट? मूव करेंगे नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन की तरफ. सो द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज Rajaji Tiger Reserve. It was recently news. The Rajaji Tiger Reserve is located in which of the following states? So correct answer is Uttarakhand. It is situated in the state of Uttarakhand. Now the question is why it was in news. It was in news because recently elephant safari was reopened in Rajaji Tiger Reserve and Jim Corbett Tiger Reserve for after a gap of 7 years, right? So look at the explanation part. Elephant safaris resume in Corbett and Rajaji Reserve after a gap of 7 years, right? Do remember all these important areas. Examiner may ask questions from like this area. Now let's move on to the next question. So question number 5 says, with reference to the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, consider the following statements. The first statement says, the KPCS was launched in 2003 to curb the trade in conflict diamonds. Absolutely correct. The second statement says, under the KPCS, the certification system is enforced collectively by the United Nations. No, that's not enforced collectively by the United Nations, right? So second statement is absolute statement, incorrect hai. The third statement says the scheme applies only in rough diamonds entering the legitimate supply chains. This is absolutely correct. This scheme applies only in case of the rough diamonds, not in case of the polished diamonds. So question is which of these statements given above are correct? So correct answer would be only 1 and 3. So A for Ahmedabad would be the correct answer. So look at the explanation why we picked up this question. So India to assume prestigious chairmanship of the Kimberley process from January 2026, right? So this article was in news recently, and this initiative involves governments, international diamond industry, and civil society to prevent trade in conflict diamonds. Now let's move on to the next question. So question number 6, with reference to the Valmiki Tiger Reserve, consider the following statements. The first statement says, it is located along the Indo-Nepal border in the state of Bihar. Absolutely correct. Second statement says, the river Gandak flows along the western boundary of the reserve. Again correct. The third statement says, it is the only tiger reserve in Bihar. Again correct. So how many of the statements given above is oblique are correct? So all these statements are correct here. So C for Calcutta would be the correct answer. Now, why we picked up this question? There is a reason. So look at this one. So Valmiki Tiger Reserve lies along the Indo-Nepal border in western Champaran district of Bihar, and the river Gandak forms the western boundary of the reserve, and it is the only tiger reserve of Bihar, right? So basically यहाँ पे जो टाइगर का पॉपुलेशन है वहां पे एक शार्प राइज देखने मिला है इस टाइगर रिजर्व में, वाल्मीकि टाइगर रिजर्व में, इसलिए हमने इस क्वेश्चन को यहाँ पे फ्रेम किया है, राइट? सो देयर इज अ शार्प increase in the number of tigers in the Valmiki Tiger Reserve. Now let's move on to the next question. Arunachal Pradesh shares an international border with China. Yes, correct. Myanmar, again correct. Bhutan, also correct. So how many of the above statements given above are correct? Correct answer would be all three. So Arunachal Pradesh, it was previously known as NIFA, the Northeastern Frontier Agency. And do remember that Arunachal Pradesh, previously it was a union territory, and Arunachal Pradesh became a full-fledged state in 1987 along with Goa and Mizoram. Right? So do remember all these additional facts. Now let's move on to the explanation part, that why we picked up this question. So there is a reason. Recently, the American Pentagon report was released, which mentioned that China's claims on Arunachal Pradesh, Taiwan, and other territorial and maritime claims in the South China Sea were the key to achieving the great rejuvenation by 2049. Means by 2049, China may try to illegally occupy the state of Arunachal Pradesh, right? So it is the core agenda of China. So Arunachal Pradesh borders China. You can see this. So this one is the state of Arunachal Pradesh, and it forms its border with China, with Myanmar, and with Bhutan as well, right? And do remember, it is also known as the land of rising sun in India. Why? Because it is the easternmost state of India. So look at this one. This is Dibang Valley, right? कुछ important यहाँ पे locations हैं, ये exam में आते रहते हैं. So do remember these locations. And this one is the McMahon line. It was drawn somewhere in 1914, right? Now let's move on to the next question. So question number 8. With reference to the K4 submarine launched ballistic missile, consider the following statements. The first statement says, it is a nuclear capable intermediate range missile developed by the DRDO for the deployment of on Arihant class submarine. Absolutely correct. The second statement says it uses a two-stage solid fuel propulsion system and has a range of about 3,500 kilometers. Again correct. The third statement says it can be cold launched from the underwater and it is guided using INS supported by the GPS and NAVIC system. Again correct. The third statement says it has a short range. It has a shorter range than the K-15 missile. No, that's not correct. K-15 Sagarika ka jo range hai, that is 750 kilometers, whereas the range of the K-4 submarine launched ballistic missile is around 3,500 kilometers, right? So it is far greater than that, not shorter than that. So fourth statement is incorrect here. Question is, how many of these statements given above is oblique are correct? So fourth one is the odd man out. So all four cannot be the correct answer. Correct answer would be C for Calcutta. That is only 3, right? Now, why we picked up this question? There is a reason. So look at the explanation part. See, India test fires 3,500 kilometers missile from the nuclear submarine. And which one? The nuclear submarine INS Arighat, where in the Bay of Bengal region. Clear? So all these statements are correct here except the last one. Chaliye, now let's move on to the next question. So with reference to the PM Setu scheme, consider the following statements. The first statement says it is a centrally sponsored scheme aimed at upgrading government ITIs into industry aligned training institutions. Absolutely correct. The second statement says under the scheme, 1,000 ITIs will be modernized using a hub and spoke model with 200 hub ITIs. Again correct. The third statement says this scheme is implemented by the Ministry of Education with the financial assistance exclusively from the Asian Development Bank. See, half of the statement is correct. This scheme is certainly assisted by the ADB, by the Asian Development Bank, but this scheme is not implemented by the Ministry of Education, but by the Ministry of Skill and Development. So the third statement is incorrect here. The last statement is one of its components includes setting up special purpose vehicles with anchor industry partners for the outcome-based training. Absolutely correct. So question is, how many of these statements given above are correct? So correct answer would be only 3, C for Calcutta, right? So all these statements are correct here except the statement number 3. Now let's move on to the explanation part that why we picked up this question. So you can see this. The Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship invites industry leaders to participate in the PM Setu scheme. Right? The Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship has invited industry leaders to participate in the PM Setu scheme, making a shift towards an industry-led model of vocational training. Right? So this topic was in news recently. Now let's move on to the next question. So this is the last question of today's session. So with reference to Nigeria's international borders, consider the following statements. So Benin, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. How many of the above countries share a land border with Nigeria? So Benin is there, Nigeria is there, Chad is there, Cameroon is also there. So correct answer would be all 4, right? And why we picked up this question is a very strong reason. See, recently, America launched an airstrike against Islamic State militants in the northwestern Nigeria. See, if you see the map of Nigeria, then Nigeria की जो demography है उसको we can divide in 2 parts. The northern region is an Islamic dominant region, right? तो यहाँ पे जो population है in the northern region that is Islamic, and जो southern region of Nigeria. So in the southern region of Nigeria, you would find the Christian dominant population, right? So Muslims are primarily concentrated in the north, while the Christians are mainly in the south of Nigeria. Clear? And do remember that this strike was launched in close cooperation with the Nigerian government, and this strike was conducted at Nigeria's request, and it targeted the ISIS militants in the northwestern Nigeria. The operation was conducted by the US Africa Command, AFRICOM, and not Indo-Pacific Command. Do remember all these important statements. So Nigeria shares its land border with Benin, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, right? So look at the map of Nigeria. This is Nigeria. So Nigeria forms its border with Niger, with Benin, with Cameroon, and with Chad, right? And this is the Gulf of Guinea. Clear? तो यहाँ पे कोस्टल एरिया भी फॉर्म कर रहा है, सो इट्स नॉट अ लैंडलॉक कंट्री। गाइस, दिस वाज टुडेज सेशन। मिलेंगे अपने नेक्स्ट सेशन में। बाय बाय, टेक केयर, जय हिंद।